Good morning, Refuge Student Ministries. This is our third DIGI Sunday. Can't believe it. My goodness. Can't believe it's been about 3 weeks of this stay-at-home experience we all get to partake in. So I pray that you're staying healthy, staying focused, staying busy. That's a big one. Throughout this, and just know that myself, the leaders, are continuing to pray for you all. Parents were praying for you, students were praying for you. I hope and pray that you're praying for us as we continue to navigate the anxieties and stresses and worries of this really weird season. I don't know if any of you have been to this place, but I was thinking about the Grand Canyon. Now, if you've been to the Grand Canyon, you know, I think, what I'm about to talk about. The Grand Canyon is epic. Grand Canyon's massive. It's overwhelmingly beautiful. I went to the North Rim a few years ago when I was on a road trip with my buddy, and we went to the North Rim. And I'll never forget driving into the national park, and it's just meadow. You know, you're seeing deer, and you're seeing, I think, bison or buffalo, and you're just so straight shot. And it's woodsy, and it's just perfect weather. And I remember parking, walking out, and just walking past these beautiful trees, and then boom, there it is, the Grand friggin' Canyon. And I feel like oftentimes, like, it's easy for people to hype things up, and then you're disappointed, right? Like, man, that thing's so awesome. You have to experience it. You keep hearing it, and then you go, and it's like, okay, like, that was cool, I guess. Like, the thing with the Grand Canyon is, it's been overhyped forever, and there's a reason for the hype, and there's a reason why it's called the Grand Canyon, because it's grand, it's epic. And to this day, it's the most beautiful thing I've seen. Just a piece of nature that is just so mind-blowingly beautiful. I share this story about just my reaction to the Grand Canyon because this morning, as it is Palm Sunday, the day that's leading to the crucifixion, and eventually the resurrection, I was thinking about these terms, awe and wonder, and how there's been moments in my life because of God's divine interruption where he just said, nope, I see this is what your plans are, but I'm going to stop you right there and put you directly on my path. And I think of these moments and these things that have happened in my life where God was so fully there that I couldn't help but be in awe and wonder. Just like I was in awe and wonder looking at the Grand Canyon. And there's a verse I want us to look at this morning as we prepare for a week leading up to the crucifixion and the eventual resurrection. But it's Jeremiah 29:11. It's a verse a lot of us have heard. It's a verse some of you may have never heard. And if you haven't, here it is. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Now, this is in the book of Jeremiah, who's a prophet, well before Jesus' time. And this is something God spoke to Jeremiah, to the remaining Jewish exiles who were forced to leave their home of Jerusalem, and they were in the city of Babylon. And so it's these group of exiles who have been away from their home for years and years and years. And I'm looking at the context of this verse, and then looking at these words, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. And I imagine the exiles hearing this, being both comforted and confused, because comforted because there's the guarantee that there's hope. God's promising hope, but confused because they're like, but we're still exiled. We still don't have a home. We still had everything stripped away from us. And so there's the comfort and the confusion. And although we're nowhere near the, I think, emotional levels that these exiles experience, we're in a season right now where we've had things stripped away from us. Students, you have school stripped away from you. You can't meet at your schools right now. You can't be with your friends right now. Parents, you are now not just parents, but for some, you're teachers. You have to teach your students, and you have to navigate this new season while balancing work. I know myself, I've had to deal with the fact that I work at home, and then I have to be home after work, which is where I work. So I never leave work, you know? I can't go to Disneyland, can't go to the movies. For those who are into sports, you can't watch your sports right now. We've had the things that we, in American context, that we've enjoyed, that we've been used to, and it's all been stripped away. And I think this verse, this word from God to the Jewish exiles resonates perfectly for our situation right now. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Not Jeremiah, declares God himself. That he knows the plans he has for you, for us, for me. And these plans are not for evil. They're for welfare. They're for good. Also, that way you can have a future and a hope. Now, that future and that hope, it's through God's eyes, not our own. So none of us would have been able to predict that 2020 would look the way it is right now. And we don't know what it's going to look like in a few weeks, in a few months, tomorrow. We have no idea. And I hope and I pray that we can rest in these words from God, that he has a plan for you and for me. And we're not going to understand that plan until that plan comes into fruition. Let me give you an example. When I, graduated high school, I was kind of like doing my own thing, and I got an opportunity to work at Forest Home, Ojai, which was the camp I went to growing up in our high school ministry. And it was a job to do video, and which is a dream job, but I was hesitant because I didn't feel like I was Christian enough to work at the camp. I had the false perception that if you worked at a camp, you were the perfect Christian. And I was this close to backing out because I just didn't feel like I was Christian enough. And I now realize God had other plans, and I worked at that camp. Now, that camp was significant in the summer of 2011 because it was the summer I felt like I realigned with God's will for my life. It was also the summer I got introduced to our junior high ministry when it was led by Lenny. Now, Lenny asked me to join as a volunteer leader before camp, and I said no. I was like, I don't know if it's for me. So they come up to camp, have a great time, and when I leave that camp, I realized I need to get plugged in somewhere, and I got plugged in with our junior high ministry as a volunteer leader. Now, I look back, and I was like, I wasn't the best volunteer leader. I was young and still dumb. But I stuck around because God knew. He knows the plans for me. And going into my third summer working at camp, I get a call from Lenny about him taking over a high school ministry and wanting me to take over junior high ministry. I don't really know what to say. That's a big commitment. And I told him, give me the summer and I'll think about it. And by the end of the summer, I realized this is the clear path. So I took the job, and that's when I took over a junior high ministry. And here I am now running the junior high and high school ministries, 6-7 years later. Now, there's a lot of little things that happened in that time that when I look back, I realized, dang, God was, preparing me for this position, preparing me for the place I'm in. And he's continued to prepare me for something else. But I share that because I want to encourage you all that God does have a plan. And you don't know what the plan is. I don't know what the plan is. But I pray that we can trust him with it. That he has something in store for you. It can be a big thing. It can be a small thing. But it's going to be a meaningful thing because it's from God. And I pray that throughout that process, throughout the waiting, throughout the pursuing, throughout the comforts and the confusions, you can find the moments where you can just be in awe and wonder of his sovereignty, of his control, of his purposeful actions. Because with Christ and the crucifixion, God was preparing that. When you go back through the Old Testament, you're going to see Jesus littered throughout that whole text. Because God knows the plan. Because he's the one who's creating the plan. And he was preparing the way for Jesus. So that way we can all be redeemed. So that way we can all be saved. So that way we can have that connection with God. And he prepared it the way he prepared it. And he's preparing you for something. He can be preparing you for a new season of life. With a conversation with a friend. I don't know. But all I know and all I pray for is that you can look back at your life and where you're at right now. And you can find at least one or two or a few moments where God just divinely interrupted your life in the best way possible. I pray this week as we build up to Good Friday and Easter that you will find moments where you can just sit back and reflect on what God has done in your life. As we are in this confusing, anxiety-inducing season, coming personally, it is going to be extremely healthy to reflect on these moments. Because it's going to be really easy to get stuck in the mindset of, God, where are you right now? But then I can look back and I'm like, but God, you were there for me then, you were there for me then, you were there for me then. That means you're going to be there for me now. And I may not see it right away, but I know that you are going to do something with all of this. And so I pray that you can find those moments this week. I pray that you can find moments where you can sit back in awe and wonder. Because the reality with the feeling of awe and wonder is that it's meant to point you to something else. That feeling of awe and wonder is meant to point you to something else. And that something else for us as Christians is God. Is God who is the creator of all things. When you look at a sunset, when you look at a beautiful mountain, when you look at beautiful scenery, you just see something that just you can't help but sit back and be amazed by. Realize that we can have that daily with God. We can have that consistently with him because he is the creator of all things. And so my prayer this week is that you'll find those moments, that you will seek out those moments, and that you will find time this week to just sit back and reflect on what God has done in your life so far. And so my encouragement for you all this week is to find moments of rest, find moments where you can just connect with God, find moments to journal. Journaling for me has been key. Find moments to pray, to take a break, to just be still and trust that he is working everything for good. I love you all. I'm praying for you all. Have a blessed week. And I just pray that you're preparing your hearts for Easter weekend. And that God will use Easter weekend to just fully proclaim his glory and presence in your personal lives. Love you all. Be good.